The first time the security lights flickered in the warehouse, I told myself it was just the wind. I had only started the night shift 2 weeks ago, and already I was learning how this old building liked to creak and groan long after the forklift stopped moving. But that night, when I hit the lot at 11 p.m., the sprawling emptiness felt different, like the place was holding its breath, waiting for something. My job's simple: monitor the CCTV, log the rounds, and make sure nobody breaks in or steals anything. It's an auto parts distributor, all sheet metal and echoing corridors, tucked in the industrial zone at the city's edge. Nobody works overnight but me. The manager says it's because of a break-in last year, but I've never seen any evidence of that. Just the endless stretch of empty shelves and the thick, chemical smell of oil and rubber. As I walked through the warehouse, my boots stuck faintly to the concrete, picking up the stubborn dust that never quite disappears. I tried not to think about how the shelves seemed to shift in the shadows, towering over me like they might lean in if I turned my back. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, their cold white glow too weak to reach the floor in places. At the far end, the darkness always pooled, thick and unmoving, no matter how many times I replaced the bulbs. I climbed the metal stairs to the office, my little base for the night. It sits on a sort of catwalk, overlooking the aisles. The window is always smudged, but I can see enough to tell if anyone's moving below. I settled in, logged my start time, and scanned the monitors. For a while, I watched the grainy feeds, the greenish shapes of boxes and pallets. It was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. Slow, a little shallow, like I was waiting for the silence to break. About midnight, the motion sensor alarm chimed. Not loud, just a single digital beep. I checked the feed. Nothing. I told myself it was probably a rat, or maybe a bird that got in through the loading dock. Still, I grabbed my flashlight and headed down, more annoyed than anything. The beam shook as I moved, and I hated how my hand wouldn't stay steady, how the light bounced across the concrete like it was searching for something I didn't want to find. When I reached the far aisle, the air felt cooler. There was a faint, sharp scent, almost metallic, mixed with the tang of engine oil. I shone the light along the rows. Nothing but cardboard and shrink-wrapped crates. But as I turned to go back, I heard it. A faint scrape, like something dragging along the floor. I stopped so suddenly my knees almost buckled. I swung the flashlight, but all I could see were endless shadows and the glint of metal racking. I waited there, holding my breath, telling myself it was nothing. But the scrape came again, softer this time, then vanished. Maybe something had fallen. Or maybe it was just the building settling, pipes expanding or contracting. That's what I told myself as I walked back, but I couldn't stop glancing behind me, half expecting to see someone, or something, following in the dark. Back at the office, I tried to laugh it off. I sat and checked my phone, but there was no signal, just a spinning icon where the bars should be. That happens sometimes. The manager blamed the thick concrete walls. I tried to focus on my logbook, but the tip of my pen jittered along the paper, making my writing look strange and uneven. A little after 1 a.m., I saw movement on the monitor in aisle 7. Not clear. Just a shape that flickered from one edge of the frame to the other, like a piece of shadow peeling away from the rest. It was so quick I almost doubted I'd seen it at all. I leaned forward, pressing my face so close to the monitor that my breath fogged the glass. The screen flickered again, a brief static ripple, and then everything looked normal. Rows of crates, motionless and silent. I waited, trying to convince myself it had just been interference. Maybe a stray insect crawling across the lens. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted in the warehouse, some tiny balance disturbed. My ears strained for any sound from below, but the only thing I could hear was the thump of my own pulse, and somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of the refrigeration unit cycling on. After a few minutes, I forced myself to get up and check. My mouth felt dry as I locked the office door behind me, even though I knew nobody else had the key. I moved quietly, almost expecting the dark to press back at me with each step. My flashlight beam looked thinner than before, as if the darkness was swallowing its edges. I walked down the catwalk stairs, the metal grating giving a low, groaning complaint under my weight. Aisle 7 was colder than the rest of the warehouse. There was a faint vibration beneath my boots, like some hidden machinery was running deep inside the concrete slab. I scanned the shelves, moving my light slowly side to side. Everything in its place. No boxes out of line, no footprints, no sign of a break-in. Only that odd smell. Stronger now, less like oil, more like something damp and earthy, the way old pipes smell after a heavy rain. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" My voice sounded small and out of place, swallowed by the high ceiling. There was no answer. Just as I started to turn back, I caught a glimpse of something at the very end of the aisle. A shape, low and indistinct, ducking out of my light. My breath stuttered in my chest. I took a few hesitant steps forward, telling myself it had to be a cat, or maybe a raccoon. But as I rounded the last shelf, there was nothing but empty floor and pallets stacked with shrink-wrapped fenders. No movement. No animal. Now. Just the hush, and that strange chill, like a draft coming from somewhere it shouldn't. I heard a faint click behind me. The sound of the catwalk door shutting, or maybe just the wind rattling the metal. I hurried back, fighting the urge to break into a run, my legs prickling with that electric feeling you get when you know you're being watched. I didn't see anything on the way up, but when I reached the office, the door was open a crack. I was sure I'd locked it. My hands shook as I pushed it wide, flicking my light inside. Nothing out of place. My chair, the monitors, the logbook, all where I'd left them. I told myself maybe I'd imagined locking it, that I was letting nerves get to me, but I couldn't shake the suspicion that something had been in here, just seconds before. Trying to calm down, I poured myself coffee from the old thermos I kept under the desk. The bitter metallic taste somehow made things feel more real, anchored me. I stared at the monitors, willing myself to find some obvious explanation. But the feeds all looked normal now, if a little grainier than usual. I scrawled a note in the logbook, checked aisle 7, all clear, and tried to make my handwriting steady. It must have been close to 2 a.m. when the next thing happened. I was half dozing in my chair, the buzz of the fluorescents blurring my thoughts, when a sharp clang rang out from somewhere. Below. Below. The sound had a weird, hollow echo, like metal slammed against metal, but distorted, too loud for just a dropped tool. It seemed to reverberate through the steel beams and settle in my bones. My eyes flew open, breath stuck in my throat. I waited a few seconds, hoping for a follow-up noise to tell me what it was, but the warehouse went dead quiet, more silent than it had been all night. I forced myself to stand, knees stiff. I told myself it was probably a shelving bracket collapsing, or maybe a heavy crate shifting. Plenty of normal explanations, I repeated in my head, but none of them felt convincing. I grabbed the flashlight again, even though the idea of going out there made my skin crawl. I checked the logbook first, almost out of habit, and my heart gave a lurch. The last entry, the one I'd just written, looked off. The handwriting was mine, but the letters slanted wrong, as if the words had been written by my hand, but with someone else's intent. I slid the book shut and tried to laugh at myself, but the sound came out thin. I turned to the monitors, looking for movement, but the feeds had all frozen, just static gray frames, lines crawling up and down. The time displays at the bottom flickered in and out, numbers stuttering. It felt as if the whole place was holding itself still, just for me. I stepped out of the office, the catwalk vibrating faintly with my footsteps. The air tasted stale, tinged now with a sour tang, like old batteries in rainwater. I moved quietly, careful not to let my boots scuff too loud. My flashlight cast long, thin shadows down into the aisles, the beams catching on dust motes that spun in the air like insects. The noise had come from the loading dock. I could see the edge of the warehouse bay, the big metal doors sealed, but one of them had a narrow gap at the bottom now, a sliver of blackness, as if something had wedged itself underneath. As I got closer, the temperature dropped, the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. My breath fogged in front of my face. I thought I heard the faint sound of breathing, slow and measured, not my own. I stopped, listened. Nothing but my pulse thrumming in my ears. Trying to steady myself, I crouched to look under the door, shining the light along the concrete. Nothing. Just the warped glare of the beam on the grimy floor. Then, as I started to straighten, I saw it. A set of wet, uneven footprints, toes pointed in, leading away from the door and disappearing behind a pile of crates. The prints were wrong. Not boots or shoes, but bare. The toes oddly long, the heels shallow like someone, or something, had dragged itself forward. The sight made my scalp tighten, and I had to choke back a sound. I backed away, my flashlight wavering. For a moment I considered leaving, just walking out and calling the manager from my car. But the thought of turning my back on those empty aisles, of not knowing what was behind me, rooted me in place. I wanted to believe I was just tired, that my mind was playing tricks under the sick warehouse lights. I followed the footprints, slow, every step a dare. The air was so cold now, I could feel goosebumps through my shirt. As I rounded the crates, the light caught something on the floor, a smear, slick and dark, not blood, but oil, I told myself. It had the same brackish sheen, and the smell was overwhelming now, thick and cloying. At that moment the lights overhead buzzed, then all at once snapped off. The warehouse was plunged into pitch, the silence complete, except for the soft